Introducing Nerpa Coating Epoxy Resin, made here in Alberta. Let's varnish a painting. Grab a two-part epoxy kit, part A and part B, some graduated plastic cylinders, electrician tape to tape your edges, a heat gun, little cups, pins, nitrile gloves, wooden stir sticks, and a level. All epoxy works best on a rigid, hard surface. Unmounted papers tend to curl, and stretched canvas tends to sag or hammock under the weight of the resin. I'm going to do a paper collage, and I'll start by tinting the wood. Here I'm using both fluid acrylics, heavy body acrylics, mixed with a bit of medium to make a transparent glaze. I want to see the wood grain of the birch panel as part of my design. So I'm carefully diluting my color to get the right transparency. Please be aware this entire video is edited for time and sped up so that you can get the gist of what I'm doing quickly, but I do not normally paint this fast. After the painting dries, I'm going to coat it with acrylic medium just to seal the wood. I'm using Nerpa Epoxy Coating Resin. They also make a casting resin. We'll do that in another video. So the resin is by Nerpa Polymers. They're based in Calgary, made in Alberta. Very exciting. But what does Nerpa mean? I mean, I had to look it up. It turns out it's a Siberian seal. You know, the one with the big eyes. So that's my inspiration for the image I'm going to coat in the resin. So in this video, we are going to seal this seal. This artwork will be a store sample at the paint spot. So I wanted to create a collage using many different medium on paper and then reassemble it and glue it onto the board. And then I will see how the resin sits on many different types of materials. So this is how I plotted out my design. So alcohol ink, acrylic, Japanese printed paper, a magazine, another magazine, colored pencil, ink. That's washi paper with acrylic on it. Then I got markers, colored pencil, ink, graphite, a map, and then of course the stained wood coming through, some silver, some more marker. Varnishing or sealing work is always stressful, so I need a cup of courage. Is the work done? Am I ready? Oh, another cup of courage. Okay, let's get to it. First, to consider is how you're going to deal with your edges. Here I've painted mine a nice cobalt teal, and I have to decide, do I want the resin to flow over the edge, or do I want to protect the edge? To protect the edge, I'm using the black electrician's tape. Tightly up against the corner, press down firmly. Resin will not stick to vinyl. So go carefully around your edges, and if the resin flows over, it won't stick. You'll be able to pull it off and have a clean edge. Ensure everything is tight and well stuck down. 2 or 3 layers of tape may be needed, depending on how thick your profile is on your wood. The edge that's touching the corner of your artwork is most important. Make sure that is well stuck down. You don't want resin seeping through the edges. Next, ensure that your artwork is level. You don't want the resin to be running off the edges of your work, so a level surface is essential. I use push pins partially put into the wood as little legs. And then when I flip it over, I can push down the pins where an edge might be high. So this gives me little adjustable legs I can use to level my artwork. Takes a bit of finickiness, but it will work. Shh, don't tell my husband I borrowed this amazing level from his garage. Do check level from different directions, especially if your work is large. There's great information right on the container. It tells you it is a bio-based, extra clear, UV protection. And on the back, you have a QR code you can scan for instructions. And here is the step-by-step pictorial instructions. On the other half of the recipe, it tells you the ratio, so do mix it 1:1. Take that equal part recipe seriously and measure using graduated containers. The product is very syrupy. It pours slowly. If you have a cold room, it will pour slower. So you could put your containers in warm water, not hot or boiling water, but warm water for half an hour before you start mixing and measuring, and the product will be more liquid. Me, I never follow my own rules, so watch me pour thick stuff. Reminding you again that this is a sped up edited video. Now get a third clean container and pour the two products together. Do not simply pour one container into another container, because you'll see how much product is clinging on the side of the container, and clingage will upset your ratio and make your resin not harden. So look at all that stuff stuck on the container. So if I poured one container into the other, I'd have the full amount in one container, and that clingage loss would be in the other container. My ratio would be out of proportion and my resin might not harden. So mixing the two together into a third container is the best way to do it. A little rubber or silicone spatula is the best to use, but I had a little wooden stir stick, so it took me a little longer. So after perfect measuring comes thorough stirring. Now you're stirring two clear liquids together. It's hard to see, so really it's important that you stir for at least 3 to 5 minutes. You're not whipping it up, but you are stirring it and making sure all the product is well incorporated into each other. And you will see that because you're adding bubbles, the product is going to get a little milky. And you might be really excited to get to the pouring of the resin, but do take extra time to stir. Proper measuring, thorough stirring, that is the key to success in getting your resin to harden perfectly. Okay, now the highlight of the video. Let's get pouring. But first, check for level again. I like to pour from the outside edge, maybe an inch away from the edge, and work in a circular fashion inward. I find that helps me control the amount of resin more evenly and more carefully. Starting from the middle and dumping sometimes means you're going to use way too much product. Use a silicone or plastic tool to gently push the product thoroughly over your surface. Even an old credit card or paint spot gift card can be used to push the resin across the surface evenly and help it level out in every area. Manually pushing the product around in this manner will make sure that it covers the whole surface. My collage bits have edges that the resin needs to go in between. And it also helps to pop the bubbles. You'll see when I work down in this corner, it relaxes and the bubbles are popping up. So make sure you're working in a well-lit area and that you could walk around your work 360 degrees to look for all these little opportunities to coat well and pop those bubbles. I prefer using a heat gun. The warmth of a heat gun will melt the bubbles. I don't like using a torch on my art, so a heat gun provides heat without blowing. You don't want to use a hair dryer. That will blow your product off the surface. So you do want a good heat source. And those bubbles will pop. And here's me pushing it in a few bits with my finger. I should be wearing a glove, but obviously I took it off to turn my camera on again. Oops. And the final tip, cover your work. This is going to take 24 hours to fully cure, and your worst enemy is dust. So if you have some sort of box or container that you can set on top, it will protect your artwork. You know, when your furnace kicks in and then blows your dog hair and your house dust all over the surface, You don't want it to land and settle in your resin. And now for the tape edged reveal. The electricians tape work beautifully, keeping the resin off my work. I do have a few areas I might have to touch up because the tape pulled off my acrylic, but all in all, I think it was a successful edge. Yum! It looks so wet and fresh, but I assure you it is cure and dried. And that's the beauty of a resined piece. 50 coats of varnish in one step. It's a beauty shot for sure. It worked perfectly, except where it didn't. Let me show you up close. Tip 1, scrutinize for those little hairs. Get them out while it's wet. Tip 2, heat guns melt Yupo, and Yupo will curl up and stick above the resin. Tip 3, make sure you see all your edges carefully because sometimes the resin doesn't flow over the edges. Tip 4, glue down your collage perfectly, otherwise resin will lift up and curl your paper. Tip 5, seal your work with acrylic medium before resining. That would have prevented all these lumpy, bumpy bits and the resin sticking under things to push up edges. This front edge that I could see, oh, it was perfect. Look at that. Nice domed corner. To avoid uneven edges in your resin, while it's wet, you must be able to see it from all sides and look for the edges and fix them while it's still wet. Resin will also seep into papers and darken them, and in the case of magazines, it makes the paper go transparent so you can see the words behind. This might be lovely or you might not like it. Darkening the map, I think, worked to my favor. There you have it, the good, the bad, and the tips, so that your project can be successful. Come in the store and see the sample yourself, and we can discuss the tips and advice to make your project successful. These beautiful products and more at paintspot.ca.